Good evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Why is that?
Let me see.
Yeah, it's better now.
I
Yeah.
have you muted.
Yeah, you did.
Let's see.
Let me get some extra light in here. It's a bit dark, isn't it? Hold on a sec, sorry. Okay, I think that's a bit better. I think that's a little bit better. Oops.
Oh, you have the ability to unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
I'm not muted.
Because you're not muted on my end. It's your end.
That's strange. It doesn't say I'm muted. Let me get out and come back.
Hi, my name is Seanna. I am the professor on R Squared, and I stumbled across one of the first inspiring women on my journey to teach people how to love themselves again and rediscover themselves. And she is our first guest on this podcast, and I'm going to put it in the YouTube playlist, Eye of the Tiger. So in case anybody wants to follow these podcasts, that's where they'll be hosted. And for the first time, I'd like to introduce you to Zara. She is from London. I'm so excited to have you on our podcast, Zara. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you or inspired you to join us on this podcast?
Well, basically, I'm always looking for new opportunities to kind of share my story and get the word out there about just raising awareness about abuse, because I went through an abusive situation, an abusive relationship, actually. And the funny thing was that I didn't even realize that I was a victim. I didn't even realize that I was being abused until I actually left. You know, so it really just pushed me to do a lot more research and actually understand, how is this possible? Like, shouldn't everybody know that they're a victim, you know, immediately? How is it that I didn't know? You know, and I almost became obsessed with that. And just thinking about how many other women and probably men are in abusive relationships or even just situations, and they don't know that it's actually abuse, because sometimes it's not always a relationship. It can be like a boss, a co-worker, a friend, you know, a family member.
Absolutely.
You know, and people don't understand that some of these behaviors are abuse.
Yep.
So that's what made me kind of want to look for other opportunities to tell my story and just raise awareness about, you know, almost silent abuse that isn't so overt.
I am super, super proud of you for stepping on any platform, not just this one, and putting that out there, because one of the things that strikes me the most and really kind of tugs on my heart the most about the topic of abuse is whether you're in the victim mentality, survivor mentality, or have transmuted that experience into purpose, which I feel like you are stepping into right now. What blows my mind and tugs on my heart space is they don't realize they're being abused and they normalize it. So I commend you when they normalize abuse. When anybody normalizes abuse, it's so hard to crack that shell to get them to see that they're being abused. So when you're living in those flip-flops, so to speak, and you're living in those shoes, it's really, you're in a form of denial, and you know, the denial is just the top coat, right? The undercore, the yolk of the problem is they've normalized it since childhood. So they really don't believe they're being abused.
Yeah.
So, and I'll share with you my story on that in just a moment. But what I'd like to do is kind of quote you word for word on your intake sheet when you took an R squared course. You filled out our intake sheet and you said, and I quote you, "I strongly believe that my experiences were to prepare and qualify me to work with victims of abuse, and it is something I love."
Yeah.
That is like boom, like pound sign boom, right? That is the core of what my entire teachings, everything that I teach, every video, everything that I've posted on the topic of abuse, that is in one sentence. It sums it up, because I've even written a book, Letters to the Soul, The Guide to Spiritual Awakening. That book says you are not a victim. You did not live those experiences in vain. You are to transmute those experiences and use what you learned to teach others. And you just hit home in that very first sentence, which is why I could not wait to interview you. Without further ado, I would love to just start asking you a couple of questions, and let's get to the nuts and bolts of Zara and how we can help others with this discussion itself. Okay, so I forgive I forgive you if you speak freely. If you'll forgive me for asking you questions that might trigger you. We never know what triggers another person until it happens, right? So if something that I ask you triggers you, please just skirt on by it. Say you prefer not to answer it, whatever. Obligated to say anything on this podcast that you're not comfortable with saying it. Okay. So what experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, have inspired you to take action on sharing your story and inspiring others?
I think it was after leaving the relationship and, realizing that this was abuse, I kind of, got into this very angry mode. Like, how could this happen to me? I mean, I see myself as a strong, confident woman that, nobody could, pull the wool over my eyes, at least not before this relationship. So I felt really, really hoodwinked. Like, how did this happen to me, of all people? So I felt like really embarrassed, really shameful about everything that I'd gone through. And then it wasn't until I don't know, I can't even remember how I decided that I was going to write a book, but it's only when I decided to write the book that I thought, okay, I can actually turn this pain into power, because my entire story can help so many people. How many women are out there? How many men are out there that have been or are currently in situations that they don't know that it's abusive, and that's the reason why they're in there for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, because they don't know that something is horribly wrong here. So I felt like it was almost my responsibility to go out there, because otherwise, what does this actually mean? Why did this happen to me? A lot of the abuse that I experienced was spiritual abuse. That's why I speak a hell of a lot about spiritual abuse on my platform, on my podcast, everywhere, right? On my YouTube channel, I speak a lot about spiritual abuse, although it does trigger some people, but I think it's really, really an important conversation to be having. So it wasn't until I decided, wow, I can actually help people with this. That's the meaning behind it, That's what stops me from feeling like a total idiot, That's what stops me from feeling like I've been, taken the piss out of. That's what helps
Hoodwinked.
people not feel stupid and hoodwinked, you know.
Yes.
That's the only way out of it, really, you know, to turn that pain into power.
First, I wasn't aware that you had a YouTube and a podcast. Please do share those channels with us. Go ahead and tell us where to find you.
You can find me on YouTube. You can just search at Zara Black. That's XARA Black. And my podcast is Ignite Your Light with Zara Black. And you can find that on Spotify. You can find it on Anchor FM. You can find it on Apple Music. Just have a look for Ignite Your Light with Zara Black.
Awesome.
You'll find it. Yeah. So it wasn't until I decided to write a book that, wow, I can actually help people. I started filming a documentary. Wow, I can actually help people because it's spreading awareness. And that's what gives the experience meaning. Otherwise, I just feel, you know, like I've been defeated in life, you know. But if I can help one woman, if I can help 3 women, if I can help 10 women out there through my story, then that's what makes it worth it. You know, I had to go through that to help somebody.
There's a level of legacy here. Okay. It is exponential.
Yeah.
You help one woman break the cycle of abuse. Literally injected a earthquake into that family cycle for generations to come.
Absolutely.
One person that has or doesn't have, you know, has children, right? Or maybe they're having children later. One person that you help, there's a ripple effect of that legacy. So I might have 10 students, but the ripple effect of one person taking my class would be that person gets married, has children, those children are no longer on the cycle because the person that was my student learned to love themselves first and learn their worth and understood what abuse looked like and stayed away from the red flags and understood that they were, you know, possibly searching for the shadow selves of their father or mother, whoever abused them as children, because they didn't get validated and they didn't get that unconditional love when they were a child. So one person, Zara, will ripple affect the future and their families and save children's lives and you'll help the next, there's no way to measure it. You won't know that the woman that I helped or you helped last week, you know, starts dating the right men and then gets married to the right man and has children with the right man. And then suddenly 25, 30, 45, 50 years later, that man is the president of whatever country, or, you know, a leader, a teacher, a spiritual coach, a shaman, whatever they are.
Right.
Because you had that one student, you see the future of that family cycle.
Exactly. And it's funny that you talk about that family's cycle, because let me tell you, my dad actually physically abused my mom. You know, I hear stories about how, you know, he broke her nose and things like that. They split up when I was 8 months. My grandmother was abused by my grandfather. Again, fights all over the house, physical abuse, you know, separation. It's been going down in generations.
And it does. And that is what people do not understand. Now, domestic violence does not discriminate, okay? I don't care what family background, what your color is, what your religion is, what your beliefs are, what nationality you're from, what country you're from, what language you speak. It doesn't discriminate, okay? But what it does do is and statistically speaking, there are people like myself that grew up on a cycle of abuse, and my parents would never admit to abusing me at all, okay? I'm not trying to say my grandmother was abusive or my grandfather was abusive. I'm saying something happened in my father's childhood that created a narcissist. whether it be his mother worked too much because they were poor, his father died young, okay? And whatever neglect that my father received, purpose or on purpose, I'm not bashing my grandmother here, right? Purpose or on purpose, whatever neglect that my father received as a child, or whatever needs were not being met as a child, turned into narcissistic behaviors that created conditional love in my environment that entitled him to whatever it was that I had, whether it be money, whether I had to earn his love. It was not given freely. And then I was placed on that cycle. I not only did I brush things under the rug on people that were hurting me now I'm a young adult dating, I brushed things under the rug, so I was the doormat, right? But the abuse got worse and worse with different husbands, different partners. I knew, hoodwinked. I knew that I was not, I'm not a victim. I'm not standing for that. I know I'm not going to be exactly what you had said, right? But fast forward, 20 years, I realized through a series of experiences of my own cycle that I was abused as a child, good, bad, or ugly, and it carried on into adulthood because I did not know that I was abused. And right. Because the wool was pulled over my eyes, so to speak, and I was the girl that would fight for the girl that got beat up by her boyfriend.
Right. High five to that.
And then 20 years later, I am the girl getting beat up by her boyfriend or husband, right? And I couldn't believe it. So I had a level of denial, the same denial that you're speaking of. That doesn't happen to me. That doesn't happen to me. What do you mean? I'm a successful real estate agent. I've got this, that, and the other going on. I've got children, that doesn't happen to me. Yeah. And that awakening from denial to, oh my God, it's definitely happening to me. That moment right there, can you explain to the audience what that moment felt like?
I think it's really, really crazy because, just like you mentioned, I would be the one sticking up for the girl that was getting beaten up. I'm not having that. That is, outrageous. We need to have self-confidence. We need to have self-love. We need to have this and that and this and that. And then, hold on a minute. What's going on here? Me too? And it's crazy. It's like, you have to really understand how powerful the subconscious is, how powerful frequencies and vibrations are, because even though overtly we would say these things with our mouths, that we're strong and we're confident women and we're not going to stand for domestic violence. Oh, he puts his hand on me once and I'm out of that house, that kind of thing, no tolerance policy. And how did this happen? We need to start analyzing how. Because I said that wouldn't be me. So how did it become me? There is a gray area here, Yeah. I think for me, it definitely stemmed from childhood, because I feel like what you didn't get as a child, you're always going to be seeking out in your adult relationship.
That is exactly it. Psychologically proven. That is exactly it.
Exactly. So even though I would say all of these things, I had a high tolerance for, BS, because I had to withstand it as a child. When my dad would abuse me, the fact that my mother wasn't there, all those kind of things. I had a lot of feelings that I had to sweep under the rug, Mm-hmm. My voice wasn't important as a child, Right. If I did speak up for myself, there were repercussions a lot of the time. So I was taught, don't rock the boat, don't rock the apple cart, because what's going to happen, an explosion, and you're going to get, in trouble, you're going to get abused, you're going to be, you're going to get hurt at the end of it. So just don't bother doing that. And that's what I learned in the relationship with my ex-husband, because he was nice at first. Oh, you know, knight in shining armor. So, you know, come to sweep me up. I was thinking, oh my goodness, you know, I've never felt a love like this before. You know, this is what I've always wanted, a man to pay me so much attention and give me all this love and that kind of thing, because I didn't get that as a child. It was so important to me. So when he started to act up and I started to see the red flags, it's always almost like a cognitive dissonance, because on one hand, I'm like, no, he's this wonderful man that's, you know, showing me that he loves me and willing to sacrifice for me and willing to take me under his wing and look after me. So when he starts doing all these, you know, questionable acts, my mind can't actually process it. My brain is like, no, this isn't happening. No, he's that same wonderful man. So I'm going to stay in there longer because I don't believe it, or my mind can't actually conceive, you know, what is actually going on here. It becomes so confused. So you're more likely to say, oh, well, yeah, it's a red flag.
It's actually a level that cognitive dissonance is the exact psychological term, and it's a level of discomfort. You are uncomfortable with thinking all of these experiences that I've experienced with him so far have versus this experience, this new stimulus into the environment of this red flag, right? I'm uncomfortable with believing that I should focus on this stimulus, so I'll just brush it under the rug.
Yeah, we'll leave it for later. It's not that
Daddy
important.
taught you.
It's not important.
Exactly. Right. So the uncomfortableness, that the discomfort that you had when you really started consciously recognizing the red flags, discomfort kind of puts you into a state of denial, because it was easier for you to focus on the good and not the red flags.
Exactly. That, oh my goodness, this person that loves me actually doesn't. And that hurts, you know?
It does hurt.
Relationship that I feel is going to work out, this knight in shining armor that's come to rescue me, oh my goodness, this might not actually work out, you know?
Exactly. Well, you're very inspiring already, just so you know. My next question is, do you feel comfortable with giving us a few details of those experiences? And if the answer is no, then I'll take that for what it is, and we'll just move on to the next question.
No, I'm fine with that. I mean, what do you want to know?
Well, just share the most, I guess, for our viewers. It would be helpful, because I know so many of them are like, what is normal at this point? And what, am I doing this? Am I doing what she just explained? So if you were going to talk about the slightest red flag of abuse, what was it? What was that experience?
I'll tell you the first red flag. And let me tell you, this was a huge red flag. It was a huge red flag. And I, you know, let me tell the story, because this is the first. So when I'm saying all the things that, you know, he did to me, everything that I went through and stuff like that, it's almost like this was the very first red flag. And it was everything. It was huge, right? So I think we'd basically, you know, we'd been seeing we'd known each other for a while, like just as friends. And, you know, he seemed like he was, you know, really into me, you know, that kind of thing, you know, we're getting to know each other, hanging out, you know, started a relationship. And the very, very, very first time that we were intimate, the very, very first time that we had sex, right? It was consensual sex, whereby I agreed to use protection, and he used protection, right? So then after the intercourse, I noticed that the protection was on the bed. So I realized, hold on a minute, when did you take this off? You know? So that was a huge, I don't even know if we can even call it a red flag, but that was like the biggest kind of betrayal. And at that time, I didn't know that what he had done that very first time was called stealthing. Stealthing. I came across this term after I had left again, and that is a form of sexual abuse. So I had to come to terms with, oh my goodness, the very first time that I had sex with this man, he sexually abused me because I only consented to sex with the condition that there was protection, but I didn't consent to sex without protection, and he removed the protection without my knowledge. So that means he sexually abused me, you know, and I didn't know that this was sexual. I was very mad, you know, extremely mad. You know, I told him, you know, all sorts of things, you know, very, very mad at him. But why did I stay in that, you know?
And just for the sake of abusers, just to clarify, for the viewers, what she means when she says it's sexual abuse, and it absolutely is sexual abuse. But when we define, because some people might listen to that and be like,
that's not sexual abuse. Yeah.
It's not a chargeable offense. Sexual abuse is a chargeable offense. It's not the same. They will come up with excuses to minimize
it. No. And let me tell you why that should not be minimized. Because if I didn't want a baby, now put me in a position where I have to accept a baby, right? Or put me in a position where I have
an STD.
STD, and we'll get that in a second.
Right. Hello. So the definition for our viewers, the definition of abuse is any form of power and control. Okay. That gentleman removing protection without her knowledge, viewers, is exerting power and control. And she clearly stated what her boundaries were. Her boundaries were sexual intercourse with protection. That's it, right? He, on purpose, removed protection and crossed her boundaries without her knowing it, which is abuse.
That is absolutely abuse.
I wanted to clarify in case there was anybody out there thinking that's not, nobody's diminishing abuse on this channel, I promise you.
And let me tell you, because at that time, I didn't see that as abuse. Yeah, I was mad and stuff like that. I was like, oh my goodness, obviously now I have to go and check, you know, if I have an STD or I'm pregnant or whatever, because I didn't agree to this, right? You're a new sexual partner, so I have to check these things now. So you've put me in a position where I have to do all that. But I didn't see it as abuse at the time. I didn't know that it was actually an actual act of sexual violence.
However, you felt angry.
Yeah.
You felt betrayed.
Betrayed, absolutely.
You felt like a little like hoodwinked.
It was absolutely hoodwinked, yeah.
Because he manipulated you into believing that you could trust him to respect your boundaries, and that he didn't.
He didn't. And the worst thing was his attitude after I discovered this. He was literally so like nonchalant, like, oh, whatever, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh my God, who is this monster?
Now he's minimized your boundaries and made you feel crazy or
for being mad.
Big deal out of something that you shouldn't be making a big deal out of. And that is abusive. Mentally and emotionally abusive.
Exactly. Because then you now start to check yourself and think, is it really that bad? I mean, you know, maybe this, maybe that. You start to make excuses for the abuser.
Right. You know? Because he made you feel like you were overreacting.
Yeah. And I think the first reaction is normally the correct reaction, which is to be angry at being tricked and hoodwinked, and the fact that he didn't respect my boundaries to use protection. So I think that was the first betrayal in my kind of journey with this person.
And that's a big one. And I can tell you across the board, that message alone and how we are dissecting this experience, could potentially wake up hundreds of thousands, depending on how many subscribers to the channel, my channel, your channel. I'll send you a copy of this if you want to share it. Literally wake up thousands of women.
Yeah.
Right? And men. I don't mean to discriminate on sex. It does not discriminate. Okay. But that as an example, if you were to across the board, just take the definition of crossing boundaries and how it made you feel, and then how he gaslighted you into making you feel some kind of way, like, am I overreacting?
Yeah.
It's my boundary, I was clear about it, but now he's aloof, maybe I'm overreacting.
Yeah.
Second guessing yourself is why victims stay in abusive relationships.
Absolutely.
Second guessing right there. And it could be, he spit in your face, he punched you, he choked you, he kicked you in the stomach and knocked you to the ground. But the second you behaved or reacted or said something that brought his attention to how they crossed your boundary, that second, that moment in time, freeze frame that moment in time. And what you have is somebody that's going to manipulate your mind into believing that you overreacted, or you made that up, or I didn't really spit in your face, that didn't happen. My last husband would literally choke me and then tell me he didn't. Like, bad. Yes. So I commend you for, I don't even know how to say thank you, because we are dissecting the problem in this video all itself. And it's huge. It doesn't have, it could be they pulled a knife out on you. If it's crossing your boundary and then you say something, I can't believe you pulled a knife out on me just now. And then he says, I didn't.
Right. And it's very, very similar to what I was saying earlier about my childhood and me speaking up for myself to my dad, and it being minimized, and or me there being a repercussion to me speaking up for myself, you know, me getting in trouble or feeling embarrassed or shameful about, you know, what my dad is going to do after I speak up for myself. So it's easier to just stay on their good side and go along.
It's conditional love. You need your needs, your Maslow's hierarchy of needs are first to be loved and accepted from your caregivers, from your parents. And if your parents are giving you conditional love from a child, from birth on, you have to, your subconscious mind will lie to you. Your ego will lie to you to keep you safe from believing that the only people in the world that are supposed to love and care for you put conditions and strings attached to that love.
Exactly. So when you get into a relationship, you're more likely to accept it from a partner because you've been through it already, you know, you're used to it.
You're used to it. And it's not even that you don't even have to realize that you've been through it already. To minimizing the behavior to be loved by your caregiver.
Yeah, that's more important, getting that love.
Right.
You know?
And that is the cycle.
You don't care what he did. You don't care the level of betrayal. You don't care that he hoodwinked you or tricked you or beat you or whatever, lied to you, because the love is more important. The relationship is more important. Getting love, that very first, knight in shining armor that he showed you in the beginning, that is what's more important to you at that time than all of the manipulation, the lies, the hurt, the cheating, the beating, whatever it is, you know? Yeah. And that is a huge representation of where our wounds are, that we need to love ourselves, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I can't even place a value on the first portion of this call, because it's going to hopefully change thousands of lives and thousands of cycles of abuse just by how we dissected the problem right there. So I'll move on to the next question. What type of abuse do you feel was the most painful? whether it's physical, emotional, mental, financial, and how did you transmute that pain into your inspiration today?
Well, there were several forms of abuse in this particular relationship. There was financial abuse, there was spiritual abuse, there was a little bit of physical abuse, emotional, mental, psychological. I would say probably the most kind of harmful to me was the psychological abuse, because it's almost like, as you said with the gaslighting before, he actually took control of my mind. He actually painted a different reality for me, whereby I'm not thinking in the same kind of pattern that I would be thinking if I wasn't in being gaslighted and manipulated. So
Right.
he's changing like the way my brain is actually processing information. That is very, very, very dark, you know?
It's very dark and very painful. And
Yeah.
when you realize you've lived that and possibly taught your children that, it becomes even more painful. And then your ego wants to push you even more further away into denial, because you don't want to face the fact that your decisions, good, bad, or indifferent, your decisions on, I don't care if we've acknowledged mom and dad were abusers or not, your decisions have placed your own children in harm and have placed them on the cycle of abuse. Because the same thing that while you were watching mom get beat up by dad and hearing the stories of grandmom, and the same thing that you were forced to minimize and understand as being minimal as a child, and actually accept that, even though your conscious mind is telling you, you don't see your best friends when you spend the night, you don't see their daddy beating their mommy, right? When you're having your social, you're experiencing a social life outside of the home, your ego starts to tell you something ain't right in your house.
Right.
And then, but you deny it and you ignore it and you suppress the memory, and then you minimize it, and maybe it's me, or maybe they're just too good to be true, they gotta fight when I'm not here, maybe he beats her when I'm not here. Or you start making excuses, which is the cognitive dissonance we were talking about earlier. You start making excuses, and then that gaslighting comes prevalent into your environment, and you're like, I realized that I've been on a cycle of minimizing abuse from childhood, and now I have to protect my own children from it. And when you realize that, you get determined. When you come to that awakening as a mother, you would do nothing more. You would burn down cities to make sure that I see your little boy in the background. You would burn down cities if you found out your boy treated a girl the way your husband treated you.
Yep, 100%, 100%. And that's why I did have a lot of anger towards his mother, because I feel like she created the monster,
It's somewhere in their family.
She created the monster, because I saw a lot of behaviors and, manipulation and stuff like that she almost facilitated or almost learned behavior, that he might have learned from her, so I had a lot of anger towards her as well. But in addition to that, I think just what hurt me the most was because I did actively say that I wouldn't be like my grandma who got physically abused. I wouldn't be like my mom who got physically abused, and that was one thing that I set out to be happy to have a normal, stable family in my future. So to find myself in the very same spot that I said I would never be in, how did this happen? How did I allow this to happen in my life? Like, this was something that I swore would never happen to me.
Because you weren't consciously aware of the abuse. Everything was subconscious.
It was definitely subconscious. And that's the point where I decided that well, I decided a few times that I need to leave him, but it wasn't until the social services, you know, I think you guys call it CPS over there.
It
Right?
depends on the state. Social services, child protective services.
Yeah, child protection got involved and said, you know, we've seen the way this man is in your antenatal appointments. You know, he's been aggressive to the nurses and doctors. You know, I've called the police on him a few times. So there's a case building in the background about our relationship that I don't know about at this time. So it wasn't until they got involved and said, listen, you know, if you don't have a talk with us, you know, we're gonna, you know, take these children away. And I said, wow, oh my goodness, because in my childhood, you know, we were always, you know, in the CPS case files and stuff like that, you know, because my dad used to beat us all the time to the point where we would have like marks on our skin, marks on our bodies of how much he had beaten us. I remember one day when I was about 5, I went to school and I had, my dad had beat me the night before. He'd beat me the night before with a hanger. And I had all of these beating marks all over my back. And I think we were doing like a role play, like a school play that day. And obviously I was only 5. So the teacher was actually changing me into the costume that we were supposed to wear for the school play. And then, you know, she was zipping my dress up. And then she was like, you know, oh, Zara, what happened to your back? And I just went mute because I don't want to get my dad in trouble if I tell them that, you know, he beat me with a hanger on the back, right? Mm-hmm. So we were always like subject to like CPS cases and stuff like that. So I always said that would never be.
I wish the United States was more like it.
Yeah.
Slacks over here on it until somebody gets killed, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, mm-hmm. Because I wasn't even being physically abused. Like my ex-husband, he never actually beat me up, ever. You know, but as I said, the psychological abuse was more damaging to me because that's actually toying with the way my brain is processing information.
Very costly.
The way I'm actually viewing the world, seeing things, making decisions, you know, based on the poison that he's spilling into my mind. Yeah. So that was very, very harmful. So when, you know, CPS got involved and, you know, were threatening to take my children, I was just like, no. If I have to choose between my children and you, I will choose my children any day. If I have to sever this relationship just so to keep my children, you have got to go, sir, today. Yep. So that's when I made the final push that this is the ultimate embarrassment. I don't know what else he could have done to me that's worse than actually getting my children on a social services register. You know, for me, that just took the cake. No.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. I just got goosebumps. That's impressive. Because in the States, United States, they there isn't cross-system collaboration. And I wrote a huge article about this a few years ago and posted it on my LinkedIn and my social media. Because of the gaps in cross-system collaboration that are in the United States that clearly are not in London, women go on welfare. Kids get in the system of judicial system. They're locked up by age 12. They're in boys' village. They're on drugs. They're seeking acceptance from the kids that are using drugs. And that's how they become drug addicts. And then the mom and the child are at wit's ends over the whole thing. And then that creates a whole nother cycle because substance abuse is a cycle. And it starts from abuse in the home. When a child needs to feel accepted by somebody that is harming themselves with drug addiction, right? With drugs, right? If I feel I need to be accepted by that group of people over there that are cutting themselves, if I want to cut myself to feel accepted, it's the same thing as drug addiction, using, not the addiction, but using drugs, right? If I feel like I need to be accepted by this group or this group, this one's using drugs and this one's cutting themselves, it doesn't matter which group I pick, the underlying reason is still there. Why do I feel like I need to feel accepted by these two groups that are harming themselves?
Because you didn't get that when you were a child.
You didn't get it when you were a child. If I feel like I need this group or this group. So when we're going to look at drug addicts in the system, heroin addicts that are in the system. They got caught with their own personal stuff and now they're in jail for 3 years, right? What came first, the chicken or the egg? Right? Is it the parents' fault that the child sought that path of acceptance with teenagers that were hurting themselves? Same thing with gangs, right? Yep. If I want to be accepted among this group over here, there's drug addicts, there's cutters, and then there's the gangbangers. If I want to be accepted in this group, why? Why am I seeking love and acceptance outside of my home?
Yeah.
And that
because you're definitely, as I said, what you don't get as a child, you're going to be seeking in your adulthood.
Yes, exactly. So you normalized the abuse by telling yourself little lies that minimized it. Can you give me an example of one of those lies?
So basically, when I finally got pregnant, because, you know, he was pressurizing me, oh, you know, the reason I did that was because I loved you so much and blah, blah, blah. I want to start a family with you. I want to make it real with you. I want to marry you, this, that, and the other, right? So I'm like being gaslit thinking, okay, well, maybe there is some truth in this. Maybe he actually does love me and wants to be with me and wants to start a family with me. You know, how flattering, somebody actually loves me that much that they want to actually, you know, marry me and have, you know, children with me. That's flattering. So I eventually got pregnant. And it wasn't until I was about 4 months pregnant that he came home one day and he was like, oh my God, Zara, oh, you won't believe what happened today. Oh my God, I need to tell you something. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like pacing up and down the room. And I'm like thinking, what? Just spit it out. What's wrong with you? Like, you know, what is it? And he's like, basically, I had an appointment with my lawyer today. And she basically said that I have an application in the Home Office. You know, I don't know what you guys call it there, but I have an application in the Home Office basically to stay in the UK because I've been here for 12 years without documentation. Basically, he'd overstayed his visa. He came here on a student visa and he'd overstayed his visa for 12 years. And it just made perfect sense that that's the reason he wanted to get me pregnant, you know? Because if he has children here born in the UK, then he can stay in the UK even if we break up. Because as long as you've got dependents that were born here in the UK, you can stay here. So that's why I just felt, again, tricked, hoodwinked. You've toyed with my reproductive system to stay in another continent. Like, you know, it doesn't even make sense to me. So again, painful. It's very painful because what else on this earth is sacred? You know, what else can I give a man? You know, what else? You know, that is literally taking everything from me, and it's based on lies. It's based on trickery. It's based on of being dishonest, you know? And that just made me feel like a real big fool because I'm thinking this man loves me. He wants to spend his life with me. He wants to marry me. We're going to start a family. He's responsible. He's not going to just, you know, get me pregnant and leave me, you know, to be his baby mama or whatever. Do you know what I mean? He looks like a responsible guy and he leaves it until, you know, I'm securely past the first trimester to tell me that he doesn't have stay in the country and he's going to be needing my passport to support his application. So,
wow.
Yeah. I had two options at that point. I had two options. I was either going to actually give him my passport and help him out so he can stay here and help out with the child, etc., or be a single mom, which I swore on everything I had in this life, I would never be a single mom, ever, you know? That's why I almost had problems with intimacy, had problems with getting into relationships because I didn't want to get it wrong so badly that I wouldn't even date Mr. Right, you know? Good guys come to me and I would just be like, no, I don't want to be in a relationship with you because I was so scared of getting it wrong because I'd seen what my mother had gone through, because I'd seen what my grandma had gone through. I desperately didn't want to get it wrong, and I desperately didn't want to be a single mom. So I had
you had instant trust issues.
Yeah, exactly. So for me to put my whole trust in this guy, you know, and then he tells me, oh, basically you're only pregnant because I want to stay in the country. It just makes me look like a joke. It makes me look, my reproductive system look like a joke, you know?
That is very painful to be used for that matter.
Exactly.
Wow. So when you realized this and you saw this was the aftermath of the storm, right? You have children now. You're a single mom. Everything that you didn't want your entire life, you've manifested into reality.
How did this happen?
Everything that you didn't want. And the reason is what you resist persists.
Right.
And that's an energetic law. So you resisted bad relationships, abusive men, being the victim, being a single mother. You've resisted it so long that in your subconscious mind, you didn't have the time to process what went wrong in your childhood, to heal from what went wrong in your childhood. And now that you have all of these rocks in your bag from your parents, right? You don't even know who you are. You just know that you're expected to be somebody, and you don't even know who that person is. And if your parents praise that person, it's not real praise, because they weren't praising the real you, because you don't even know who you are.
Yeah, because I have to be quiet. I have to pretend that I'm this person, compliant, obedient.
A robot.
Yeah.
A robot in your parents' image. That's
Right.
sadly how children are raised, even right now. Like, they were definitely raised like that. Like, you always hear about the child that grew up and the father wanted the child to be this, that, and the other. Like, if the attorney father wants the child's son to be an attorney too. That's your rock, Dad. I don't want to be a lawyer. It's in my passion to do something else, right? I don't want to go to law school and spend all that time in school and have all these student loans. I don't want to do that. That's your rock. It's not my rock. What I want to do is I want to be an artist. Imagine the look on the lawyer father's face when the son says, I want to be an artist. Right? At my house, you're not. Right? So now let's send them on their way set off to failure. Okay, so I digress. Let's keep it moving. I wanted to, I have so many more questions I want to ask you. I'm not even sure if we should just reschedule part 2. What would you like to do? Because
it's up to you. I'm happy to take 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay. Well, were you taught as a child that love was earned?
I think absolutely. I don't even know if love was even on the menu, to be fair. You know, it wasn't about it being earned. It just wasn't on the menu, full stop. Like if you ask me, oh, did I feel like my dad loved me? What? Like, it's like an alien question. It's like asking me, does an orange love you? How can an orange love you? Do you know what I'm saying? In my mind,
absolutely.
You're asking too much of this orange, you know? It's similarly asking too much of my dad, you know?
There's conditional love and there's unconditional love, right? So when we say, do you feel like your father loved you? What we're really asking is, did you feel like you needed to be obedient and give him whatever he demanded of you for you to feel accepted?
Oh, definitely. You know, it wasn't even for me to feel accepted. It was for my survival.
Survival.
Yeah, it was for my survival.
You can't live in my home unless you do ABC.
Yeah. You can't have food. You can't, you can't move around. You can't do anything. You know, this is out of survival, you know, so I have to keep him happy. I have to walk on eggshells. I have to comply with his demands and instructions and all that, unless, I'm going to get it, because there was a lot of beating in my home. You know, we got beaten for everything. If there was like cornflakes on the floor, we were getting beaten, for anything.
So if you were going to rate how this impacted your life in a physical area, emotional area, spiritual area, intellectual area, social, and occupational. How did those 6 very important aspects of every human being life, how were those 6 crucial areas impacted by how your father treated you?
I feel like I always just wanted to do better and escape my situation, you know? So I would always, look to, I was very aspirational. I always wanted to do business. I wanted to be an actress. I was always looking for ways out to escape. I always wanted to be quite religious as well. Just looking like, God is going to save me, or, God sees all that's going on. And, one day, I don't know, it's going to be my turn, I guess, that kind of thing. So, but it did make me a little bit, as I said, with the dating earlier, it made me have a lack of intimacy with people because I didn't really love myself. I didn't really trust myself. And I felt broken deep down on the inside. And I thought, oh my goodness, how can I, date somebody? What if they get to see this broken girl that's inside? Are they still going to love this broken girl? So I'd rather stay away from it 100% than them seeing I'm not this, wonderful, charismatic, beautiful person that you see on the outside. I'm actually very, very broken, and I need healing. Are you going to be able to deal with that?
So with the 6 categories: physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, social, and occupational. Social was covered in dating. Yeah. I'm sure you also you're likely to attract some friends into your peer groups that were very, very toxic for you.
Yeah,
I'm sure, because it goes along with the cycle.
Yeah,
it goes along with the cycle. So emotional, you felt broken. Socially, you were dating the wrong people because you didn't love yourself. Even though you saw the red flags, you were ignoring them. How about physical? Were you ill? Did you see any physical? Now, you might not even be relating your emotional brokenness to any physical illnesses and call them a relative. But it is a fact, when you are broken emotionally, you bring on physical issues. For example, when you're broken emotionally as a child and you become a teenager and you become a drug addict, that's a physical problem, right?
I didn't
because of the issue.
I didn't actually get any of that in my childhood, but I definitely got that in my marriage. I developed gallbladder disease.
Yep.
And I developed alopecia during that time. It's a psychosomatic.
Right. And they could be, and that is one of the things that most people do not, and again, it's the gap in cross-system collaboration in the United States. If there was a cross-system collaboration, it would be easy to tell why or how somebody being physically abused, emotionally abused as a child, and then they go into their pediatrics office for their annual physical for school, and then the pediatrics, the pediatrician learns that there is some sort of hernia in the stomach, and now they need surgery, which actually happened to me. There's a hernia developing in the stomach because the child is experiencing so much stress.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
stress coming from. Nobody ever asked where the stress was coming from. They never put 2 and 2 together that a 12-year-old should not have a hernia.
Exactly.
Unless they were lifting 100 pounds, benching 100 pounds at 12 years old. They shouldn't even come close to having a hernia. And that cross-system collaboration is what's missing, and it's costly. That one physical problem could lead to other problems. So how about spiritual? You were broken emotionally. How about spiritually?
You mean from my childhood or from the marriage?
either?
Definitely. I felt lost as a child. I feel like I was always, going to almost look for a higher purpose and look for God. That's why I would, try and stay in the religion that I was brought up in, which was Christianity. And in the marriage, obviously, as I explained earlier, a lot of it was spiritual abuse. It was an abuse of spirituality, an abuse of religion. Him and his gang of alleged pastors would give me false prophecies and tell me things were going on that weren't going on. So it made me think that things were going on that weren't going on. So it's almost like toying with my mind and making me distorting my reality to think that stuff is going on that isn't. So it making me look like a crazy person to an outsider, but I know why I'm behaving like this, because of the narrative, the story that they're feeding me. So my mind isn't actually working properly. I'm not actually operating on a normal level. I'm operating on this level that they've put me on, which is with this poison. So my spiritual life was very, I decided to divorce the religion as well, because I felt like it was contributing to the abuse, because a lot of the things that I would have not put up with, I put up with because I was following the religion. So I felt I need to get rid of the religion because it's making me make even worse decisions that I wasn't, holding these principles and holding these values, So maybe if I get rid of them, maybe I'll make better decisions. Let's try that,
Right. And how about intellectual? How did this make you feel as far as your confidence level and going back to school or getting the job you always wanted or learning something new that will help you support your boys, your children?
Well, I wasn't the sharpest tool in the box at school. I always just scraped by a lot of the time. There were never any A's for me. Let's just put it like that. I was scraped to C or something like that. So it's just a pass, but not.
I'm just going to inject something. It's a little hard to concentrate when you're getting beaten with hangers.
Yeah, exactly.
It does something to a child. I wouldn't expect anything higher than a D from you. So anything higher than a D,
I'm doing well.
Don't be so hard on yourself. You weren't given a fair shot.
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't the sharpest tool in the box, which is why I wanted to go into entertainment and acting and things like that, because I always felt like that was my strength. And then just after the abuse, like with my relationship, I managed to get degrees and stuff like that, taking courses, to help, accredit myself and better myself and stuff like that, to elevate myself. But I think the experience, the life experience is what I've really sort of graduated from, because that's what's given me the push in life to do what I want to do, and which is help women and coach women who are currently in abusive relationships or are leaving abusive relationships or have left abusive relationships.
Yeah.
It's all just about helping other people to realize their self-worth, self-respect, know that it's abuse, educate themselves on abuse, and make another pathway to escape and create a new life free from abuse.
Absolutely. And we're on the same life path. So I feel you are part of my soul tribe now. So
yeah.
Get rid of me. I don't care how hard you try. Okay. So one last question. Did you take the Rediscovering You course or the Self-Love 101 course in R Squared?
It was the Self-Love 101. Yeah.
Self-Love 101. And do you have any feedback to give people? Because I mean, I made it payment optional and I just did it help you?
I haven't actually finished it yet, I have to say, because I'm a bit of a self-development junkie. So I'm like on like 3 million courses.
Yeah.
But from what I've done so far, I feel like it was really, really helpful. Just joining that course in itself is just a statement, you know, to the universe. Like, you know, I'm dedicated to loving myself. I'm dedicated to bettering and improving myself. This is of some level of importance to me that I am in this course because I want to receive from it. You know?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I was struggling with when I made it payment optional is I don't want to limit, like, your commitment. Paying for the course shows your commitment to love yourself and going on the right path, right? Yeah. But I can't, I don't have it in me to charge people to learn what I've learned. I know it's probably what I should be doing, but I just don't have it in me. I can't. What if a teenager needs it? What, do they got to steal a credit card to pay for it? So there's going to be 2 forever courses that are payment optional: Rediscovering You and Self-Love 101. If I never produce another payment optional course, those 2 will always be free forever. And if I could get any feedback on those courses to help improve the courses, because I haven't been a teacher all my life, I've known it in my heart, but I haven't always been, right? Then it would be helpful. Is there anything else you want to share before we close this?
I think I just want to say that, you know, we all have one life. That's just what it is. And you've got to make it worth it. You know, we will have some dark experiences, but it's up to you how long you stay there. And you always have another chance tomorrow to create a new life and create a new story, a new chapter for yourself. So
yes.
yeah.
Well, Zara, I can't thank you enough. And we will figure out a way to collaborate again and some other topics. Maybe we should do this once a week, because we're clearly on the same path.
Yeah, exactly.
London, I'm in the United States. Maybe we could just, you know, join our hands together across the 2 and just keep it flowing across all the people that need to hear our messages. Because, you know, I have my experiences, you have your experiences, and there's billions of people that can relate between where you live and where I live.
Yeah.
So it would be my honor to do that with you. We'll set something up, but I want to close this because I don't want, you know, the meeting to go on forever. We could talk forever.
I know.
So I do appreciate you taking the time to share your story with me. And if you want to get even in more detail about specific, you know, real deeper level kind of conversation about it, I'm all for it. Let's
do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. I love you already. Bye.